slogging on here as we continue to tape. We kind of ended that. We were just talking about Martha, Marcy, May, Marlene, and Mark talking about what it takes to put across, the emotional component in a movie about cults. So it struck me that two of the films that I found the most interesting here, that I think have a general consensus among the people who've at least seen them, both here and in our unseen studio audience, would be movies that are sort of loosely or in a strange way kind of about cults. The first would be, I think, the movie that I've been the most impressed by here, except Jafar Panahi's This Is Not a Film, which is Ben Wheatley's insane kill list. The degrees to which it's about a cult are maybe not best talked about too much, but we can all say, those of us who've seen it, I mean, Kill List is remarkable, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, it's a ferocious movie. And, he was pretty promising off of his first feature, Down Terrace. But this is just, one thing I always lament about sort of horror film, especially the endless, series of remakes of sort of canonic 70s and 80s horror, is just that, nobody really does political allegory in horror movies anymore. And this one is just totally ballsy, vicious on that. There's so much in there that.
But so usefully abstracted, right? Because it's not like a strident, obvious political allegory. I think it's there. I think in the best way, it's part of the texture of the movie. I think one of the things I really like about Kill List, I was trying to describe this to a friend. They said, "Well, what happens in it?" Because I'm never going to see it because I don't like horror movies. And I said, but if I describe it to you, it sounds so prosaic and stupid, which is a sign of how well directed the film is. Because the film is a triumph of, more than anything else, of film direction. It takes material that might otherwise, again, be, there's components from other kinds of British genre films. There's an element of gangster pictures, hitman pictures, older kinds of horror movies. And the way that he subsumes those things together and takes what's really not much as a story and makes it, terrifying. I don't just mean effective. It's really, really scary.
Well, I gotta add in here though. I have not seen Kill List, but I have to comment on your person who you spoke to.
Yes.
And I have to express real sadness for a person like that. Someone who said, "I am never going to watch the movie because I don't like horror films. I feel nothing but sadness for." That is somebody denying themselves an experience where they may not, forget about it the rest of their lives. It may imprint on them, and may kind of turn around their view of horror films.
I will pass your remarks on to my wife.
Well, that's sad. I feel sadness. Open up your horizons. Watch a few horror films.
Adam will wake her up in the middle of the night.
There's some great horror films.
With a hammer in her face.
Mark, you're the one who got us all really primed for Kill List.
Yeah. I saw the film a while ago, so it's not as fresh in my mind as it is.
How is that possible?
It's not as fresh in terms of the actual events of the film, but the memory of the film is quite strong. And like I said, I hadn't been as that disturbed watching a film for as long as I can remember.
Yeah.
And I think that today, there's so many people who try to make films that shock you or with gratuitous methods and things like that. But the way that he makes
dangerous methods.
Dangerous methods. But the way that he directs the film is true. What you said, it is a feat of direction, and also it's a film where there's no way of predicting what's coming next. And some people complain to me that the ending they feel is kind of silly. It goes to a silly part. I don't see that, and I also. And again, I didn't see what was coming at the very end, and that is, it just keeps ramping it up, and there's nothing more you can say about it other than you should go see it and experience it for yourself. And it's not really a horror film either. It has horror elements in it.
I was going to say it's a repudiation of 40 years with a British kitchen sink drama.
It is.
It is.
Yes.
Kitchen sink drama.
And then the other film that has cult-like elements, at least in terms of a group of organized people operating apart from or on a sort of fringe of society, following certain rules, would be Alps, which is a movie that I think, not counting members of our studio audience, that we all who've seen, the four of us who've seen, quite like a lot, and I think is a great improvement on Dogtooth, the kind of more supple and suggestive movie. John, you liked it a lot too?
Yeah, I did. I liked Dogtooth, but I didn't see it at TIFF when it premiered, and I kind of knew the sort of incesty, icky family, wrinkle in it. So, you're kind of waiting for it to happen in that perverse way. And when it does happen, it's kind of obvious and that. But I feel with Dogtooth, he kind of like strips it all away down to like this kernel where it's not about the, you know, performances of family, but about the idea of being a person and about curating your identity, which, you know, we all do in whatever extent. But making that whole process very creepy and very unsettling. And, you know, it's kind of, as Adam, you said, oblique in a way that's very productive, where Dogtooth was a bit on the nose. I'd be interested to see what he'd do next and if it's just going to be variations on a theme or not, but I feel like, yeah, this is kind of the...
He said in an interview the other day he wants to make a movie that he gets paid for. He wants to... he said he wanted to make he said he'd be interested to make a movie not under that set of restrictions because, I mean, Alps, you know, like Dogtooth and like Attenberg, which is an excellent film featuring one of the actors from Alps. I mean, you know, these are movies where the circumstances of production really dictate the content and the style. You know, it's amazing to me that he has the kind of control as a director that he has, because I think he's really fighting to make these films. I'm very impressed by him for that reason.
Well, even how suggestive the film is too, which just had me thinking for the entire 15-minute bike ride home about who's playing whom and how these characters are relating to each other and what is real, what is affected, what is authentic, and kind of not really resolving any of that is one of those, you know, nice things that are all too rare in any kind of...
Bob, you saw the movie twice in a row.
Yeah, I saw it on consecutive days, and unlike Dogtooth, which I despised on a first viewing and then loved on a second viewing, which is personally kind of rare for me to have 180...
You should see Wuthering Heights again.
Yes, I was going to say that to Adam. Maybe you should see Wuthering Heights again.
We'll both see it again. Never.
No, I really, as a viewer, have such a 180 on a film as I did on Dogtooth that just sort of you know, came all together for me in the whole Buñuelian through line, and it was that was the finest expression of Buñuelian cinema since the master died, without question. I think Dogtooth is an extraordinary film. I don't think it's on the nose at all, but Alps is actually connected with Lanthimos' debut film, Canetta, and it's filmed much more in the style of that film than the fixed shot, medium long shot mode of Dogtooth. And like Canetta, it deals rather intensely with role-playing, but I think it takes it much further. And it's also, like his two previous films, very political. The political allegory...
Which will not ever catch him saying as it should be.
No, right, which is fine. He doesn't have to talk about that, but it's there nevertheless. And I think he's, you know, probably the most political narrative filmmaker working in Europe now. I think with this. I also wanted to add, though, that you mentioned Attenberg, that House Films, which is a production company for Canetta, Dogtooth, Alps, and Attenberg, I mean, has now, with 4 films now under the belt, has really established themselves as a major voice. And it's a rare film company and group that really has a connective aesthetic thread running through all of their films, and I think it's really notable. They've created a brand for themselves in a way.
Jason, do you want to take us out of Alps? Anything to add? Out of the Alps?
I like rhythmic gymnastics very much, and I also enjoyed much of the post-punk music on the soundtrack. But yeah, no, again, like it's just a great movie where you really, I mean, actually one thing reminded me also of Christian Petzold's contribution to the Dreileben series, which one of my other favorite films from TIFF, where you really do, you know, come to the sort of back half of a movie and you realize that all of your assumptions are bunk, which is of course a Wire reference. But like you do, there's a beauty to that sort of thing, and there's that capacity for surprise. I mean, that's something you don't get from so many other movies, sort of more trumpeted films this year, where you get to like the last 10 minutes of shame, and it's just this utter deflation of every sort of expectation you had. To actually have, that kind of real back end thought and writing and a dramatic piece is so exciting.
Or the incredibly bad ending of Sleeping Beauty, which is a movie that wasn't good to begin with. But I mean, what an absolute fizzle of an ending. And it's interesting because a film I saw with another member of our studio audience, House of Tolerance, I think works as a really nice corrective to Sleeping Beauty. It's interesting that Julia Lee, in attempting to make, I don't want to call it a feminist statement, but some sort of statement about men and the kind of objectifying gaze that they level at women, you know, ends up not having a single plausible moment from her female character, whereas Bertrand Bonello's film, with his camera leering and caressing these beautiful women in this house of tolerance, really actually creates 6, 7, 8, 9 interesting female characters with plausible dynamics between them, plausible relationships. I think he's very sweet to them without ever losing sight of the sort of sense of entrapment in their situation. And I think that's another film where the end, in terms of reshuffling our assumptions about the movie, is provocative, and I'm not quite sure I know what it means, which is a good thing. Whereas the ending of a movie like Sleeping Beauty, I think, is so obvious that there's nothing for me to do with it except say I thought it's pretty bad.